Yeah, I'm rolling.
Cool. So as I said, I'm Sarah. Thank you very much for talking to us today. We're making a series of videos to celebrate Windrush Day next month. So we were just wondering...
To celebrate?
Windrush Day?
It's a new day.
Yeah, it's a new day.
That Windrush is a very sour project.
Yeah, we were just wondering if you could talk a bit about your experience of coming into here.
And Windrush actually tied in with Carnival, because it's the same part of the transatlantic slave trade and everything, which is a very sad story, which there's no excuse. And if you understand Leeds West Indian Carnival, you cannot separate both of them, because Leeds West Indian Carnival is a celebration of emancipation. And if you consider, it's over 100 million of our forefathers that was kidnapped and took to the Americans and the Caribbeans. And it's a very bitter program. I mean, after all these hundreds of years, people still suffering when you look at what happened in America. You have to understand the whole transatlantic system. And it's sad that the whole thing was designed by this country. So there was the British ship that took them to the Caribbean, and the sailors them who kidnapped our forefathers. They were English. And you find it very difficult even for an apology. And for me personally, what's happening in America right now, it affects all of us, because we're part and parcel of the same system. And I find, for me, I find America, I don't think they understand what humanity is. For me, when you could just kill people because of the color, they have no rights. And I find it very difficult. I could never accept, because I mean, saying, to solve an equation, you've got to make both sides equal. And until you tell me that anyone who looks like me have to be a second behind anyone, for me, I find it unaccepted. And that's why you find I was the one who brought the first West Indian Carnival to Europe. And the problem, the best thing that happened, that I wasn't born here, I was born in the Caribbean. And I understood all of it, most of it. And I find it, and this is why the oldest Caribbean carnival in Europe and the most authentic carnival, because we have an ethos. And if you haven't got a clear direction, you ain't going anywhere. And that's why it lasts us 53 years. And so we could say, we've been always branded that we've been good for nothing, happy-go-lucky, and cannot do anything successful. And for me, Leeds West Indian Carnival is the most successful carnival in the whole of Europe, that run and completely controlled by us, and very successful because we have a clear vision. And you don't forget, once you forget where you came from and who you are, you're going to get lost. And it is a very, very sad sad affair. I mean, when you look at the death of Floyd, I mean, people still, I find it difficult to accept. And you look at what happened to the people who came on the Windrush. And I know Britain, they are very good at documenting stuff. And they cannot tell me they don't know. You're asking high commissioners for information that you've got in the vault. And you look back at the young guys who came here from the First World War. They fought to defeat Nazi Germany. And you have burial ground in Africa, well looked after, of the people who you came to fight against. And then for others who died fighting with Britain haven't even got a proper funeral, a gravestone. I personally find it unaccepted, and just I am, because it isn't something you read about. It's an experience I had in the Caribbean, and you know, when you look back at it, I mean, you know, when we growing up and went to school, we had, funny enough, we came here and we knew more about Europe than most Europeans. You know, going to school, you have to be able to know the makeup of the Union Jack back to front. And up to now, we still sing the national anthem. I don't think many English people actually know the national anthem or the makeup of the Union Jack. And right now, to apply for nationality, the question that been asked, most of the MPs them will fail it. And you know what I mean, so the whole nonsense that I would not accept. I came from Nevis, St. Kitts Nevis, the Leeward Island, and we got 98.5 literacy. And I find it unaccepted that people have got no respect for the British education system. How the hell a child go to school at 5, spend 11 years in school, and come out and not fit for purpose? It's criminal. The last job I had was teaching, and I had threatened to take the department to courts for miseducating of children. Very, very serious. 11 years. And I think, you know, to get one GCSE is like getting a medal. That's a joke. That's why when our kids go back to the Caribbean, they laugh at them and call them English dummies. You understand what I'm saying? And so the whole system that I personally find it unaccepted. I don't want to be loved, but to me, as a normal human being, I demand respect. You look at the Church of England, who was heavily involved in slavery, and the slaves them branded See of England, Church of England. Christ, man. You know, I mean, this is why, you know, people watch Carnival, and they need to understand the glitz you see on Carnival Monday. There's a whole big story. I mean, my troupe, I've been making costume for the 53 years. And we are the AA team. And I deal with most of the historical, you know, I mean, different people, Sheila make costumes, there are different troops. But I deal with more of the traditional, historical, you know, like the Ashanti, we came through when our forefathers was kidnapped, they came to Ghana. They was held in the dungeon before they shipped them out. And so you research the whole history behind it. How they came to Ghana and shipped to the American and the Caribbean. So it's quite a bit of a history you learn. I've got one of my granddaughter who she's been designing and making costumes. She's 11 years old. And she's been designing and making costumes for the past 4 years, and I'm winning costumes. You know what I mean? And you know, you have to do research. You know what I mean? If you're going to bring out a costume, what is it? What's the history behind it? You know, it's nice to see the glitter and the feathers and bikini jumping around. But I mean, you know, it's more than that. You have to, I mean, look, this year we do a church service because religion played a part in our emancipation. And we do, like, the first Sunday in August, we do a church service, emancipation service. And it's not a sermon that you preach every Sunday. It's a message of who we are, where we came from, and how we get to where we are. And, you know what I mean, I'm very personally worried about the future of our young people. And I don't think politicians talk, but I don't think they're quite serious. Because you know, years ago when I was teaching, and I challenged the authorities, if a child going to school at 11, at 5, and they got to go acquire a good education that make them employable, that they could look after themselves, the family, and the community, you're going to have serious problem. Because people living long, and if someone born is going to live till, quite simple, live to 80. And if that person cannot look after himself, and the state have to keep them, you work out how much it costs to keep someone in prison. You got teachers babysitting. You're not teaching. Child could come out of primary school, going on to college and university, and studying subjects that nobody wants. And then they come out of university and go on unemployment. You know what I mean? We need to be more serious, and that's how I see life. We either live and work together in harmony in the interests of our family, our community, and the nation. We've got a long way to go.
You mentioned a few minutes ago about your 11-year-old granddaughter.
Yeah.
Right? Is there a concern that because Carnival didn't go ahead in the last year and a half, that there's going to be some sort of loss of the sharing of community, sharing of culture, sharing of history at all?
Well, they'll pick it up, you know, because I mean, they do most of your search using the computer nowadays. And the interesting thing, you know, with my children and my grandchildren, when they go back to the Caribbean, they just fit straight in because, you know what I mean, it's sad that you meet children born in England, 2, 3, 4 generations, and they cannot trace even where the parents come from, never mind the four generation. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, and I always talk about the teaching black history in schools. it's a joke. For we did the bicentenary 2007 of the transatlantic slave trade, and we put a 350-page document and education pack, and we send one to every school in Leeds, and I bet you none of them open them. So you're miseducating people.
Would you say then that's not really that much different today than what you experienced when you arrived in Leeds?
Well, nothing changed. You know what I mean? I find it. Look, I'd ask, well, address people who invite me to speak to European businessmen. And I've always asked the question, I get confused with the term ethnic minority. And I will ask, how many people who look like me is in a PO6 position and above? Don't tell me you got 5% working for you, but what are they doing? If they're making tea or cleaners. Understand? And these are some of the systems that our people who finish university and can't find a job.
Would you say, so when you came over here, it was a very negative experience then from the start, and were there any sort of positive lights in the community and having that?
Well, I might sound very, dismissive, but you got to speak the truth. 40 years ago, they brought out, the government spent a lot of money and brought out the Swan Report. And after the death of Stephen Lawrence, they rewrote and brought out the Macpherson Report. Nothing is implemented. It was amazing, talking about a couple of weeks ago, you had a program with the Church of England and slavery. And interesting to hear the Bishop of Canterbury admit that Britain is institutionally racist. And what surprised me, the Bishop of York, who's the second highest, he helped to write a document 21 years ago. And up to now, they can't get around to implement any of it. Got schools in Leeds with 80% black children and no black teachers. We're not trying, we're not intending anything. You have an incident come up, you talk about it, and once it comes off the front page of the paper, we forget it. Till 2 years after, another incident come up, and you talk about it again. Unless you're going to do something about it, like if you go into a doctor and you have an illness, a cut, and you're just going to put a bandage over it and then that's going to sort it out. You know what I mean? We live in a real world. I knew when we had the Beckett University, and I did some work with the Commonwealth Institute, and education is one of my main passion. And we work out why there's not many. I'll go back to 72, when we had a high number of Caribbean students here at universities. And we thought, well, they're going to be multiplying. And they just drop off. And then you look back and why are they not in university? Why my families in the Caribbean, the children doing very well. But our children in England are failing. Why? And we find out what was wrong. I knew, and so we had a meeting with the Chancellor of the University, Beckett, and I challenged him that a lot of kids out in Chapeltown are brighter than most of them you have in here, but I know why they're not in here. And we work out on a system where we set up, working with the university, an access course and take some of these youngsters off the street and bring them up to a level on an access course. And once they pass the access course, then they could go on to university on the main course. And we put youngsters, one youngster in particular, he was 24, did nothing at school, worked in a warehouse, and challenged him, bring him in on the access course. Passed out, went out to Bucket University, and came out with a degree in computer science. Now, one of the most successful black person I know anywhere in the country. Picked him up at 16, he was thrown out of school, they didn't even allow him to take an exam. And took him on, say he couldn't do math, he couldn't do science. And, I came from the Caribbean, and what they do, they put a boat up your backside. You're not no model cuddling. Oh, well, it's all right, you could leave it till tomorrow. Teacher telling you could, if you don't fail, you could go on to night school. 11 years in here. And pick him up and maul him, and went on to university. And he did computing engineering. And he was the first black man who worked for Bambi, who made the military tanks as a computing engineer. Now he's running his own multi-million-pound business. It's our education was set up by Britain. And the other member said, my father is a blacksmith, and when I grow old, I want to be a blacksmith. And the education system designed to fail people. If you come from a certain class, you're not going to go to Cambridge and Oxford. You come from a mining area, and you're not supposed to educate them. So I was picked up with one headmaster, and I couldn't understand him when I said to him, oh, there's no point teaching science and maths to these children because they expect them to work in the mine. And I couldn't believe there was no one born silly. None. And there's not such thing as you can't. And you should be pushed to your limit. But because you come from a certain background, you are too young to understand the mining areas and how they destroy. And I find it, me and some of the students fell out. Because when Margaret Thatcher, you have to go into back of Wakefield and some of these mining areas and see what happened to these children. The parents, you have a community around the mine. Your grandfather working there, your father, the children can come, and that is where they expect them to work. Yeah. You got private school around Leeds. I got a son-in-law used to teach in one of them, just outside Weatherby. We got £30,000 a year. And these are the children who are going to Oxford and tell you what to do. There's no way you could, £30,000 a year. So, you know, the whole class, you see, Britain is a class structured system. And it's not just destroying black children, it's destroying, and I feel that it's destroying a lot of working class kids you not expect to go up there. We set up for computer, people talk about computer and technology. They just come and feel. 1982, there was no school in Leeds, I don't think there any school, primary school especially, had a computer in them. 1982, you have these big BBC school computers. Computers just came in. And we were the first group in Leeds to set up a computer, ITech, teach computer and electronics. Because it was, at the time you had already 16 years old leaving school. Didn't go anywhere. And they had these programs setting up to do carpentry and joinery. And we tell them we don't want any in Chapeltown. And we take on the city council and set up an ITech to teach computer and electronics. The world has gone through an industrial revolution. And if you don't understand the technology, you're as good as dead.
Arthur, I think we want to maybe get to the topic of carnival, because that's what you're so synonymous with. You started it. You're so well known in the community, and I'm just kind of curious about sort of, you know, what you hope that your legacy will leave to the community. What's that sort of impression that you'd like to leave?
Well, I'm always interested in, you know, what you're going to leave behind. And one of the good things about Leeds, the difference in Leeds and all over the country, and that's why people come to Leeds, because Leeds has the only authentic carnival. London have a jamboree, not a carnival. They call it a carnival. Everybody, you know, jumping around. I mean, look down in Bristol, and we go down and we help a lot of the other carnival them, because if you see the name, the glamour, and everybody carnival. I mean, you had festival around Britain for hundreds of years, but since Caribbean Carnival cropped in, everything now is carnival. But unless you have people who understand the ethos, if you're going into carnival looking for money or prestige, you're in the wrong business. You ain't gonna last. We went into it because of very much into my forefathers and the whole plight. And it was quite interesting from the first carnival, you know, came here, and I've always wanted to take part in the Caribbeans. But my parents, they wasn't going to take part, because it's amazing how much your parents control you. There's not such thing as, you know, where your mother and father, you don't question, you know. And so we came here and we thought, we just hear a group of West Indians, on, you know, you have the ad wedding or christening, and you used to have a dance, maybe Boxing Day, New Year Day, Easter Monday, Whit Monday, August Monday. That was it. And I thought, we need an event that will bring us together in harmony. An event where you don't need an invite. Everybody needs to come and have a good time. And that's what it ended up with. So we sought it all out, the legal side, because you need the police, you need the city council, you know, because you just can't go out on the road. And you have to understand that, and you have to be able to communicate your thoughts and being practical and being realistic. And also we got a few of my friends and we put a project together. And nobody believed it could have happened. And it was quite a surprise, 1967. And it was an amazing journey. And so, maybe in London heard they had a carnival in Leeds, so they invited us to. So the first carnival in the streets of London was Leeds West Indian Carnival. So you could tell the people in London, first carnival was here in Leeds, West Indian Carnival. Material, we wonder where we're having a carnival, none of us have any money, and none of us make costume for many of us. And the materials and was quite disgusting, but we pull it off it. That's a long journey to go into it. Because most of the material that you see is carnival. Now you could buy these material in this store in town now. I don't know if you remember, most of you wouldn't remember, the pastry like Willis Ludlow in town. Because the material you ain't gonna find it in shop. They used to come out, like Lorex and this bright material. They only used to sell them at Christmas. And after Christmas, they taken away, put away, come back out for next Christmas. So we had problem finding, and we have to improvise, and we did very well, and it's good. And Leeds have a lot over the whole Europe, because it's the longest running and very sustainable. And we create more costume designers in Leeds than anywhere in the country. For making costume is a lot of skills and hard work. You've got costume designers, quite a few of them around London came up from the Caribbean. One of my friends who studied dental mechanic at Leeds University and went into carnival costume design, and that's forget dental surgeon, and that's what you make a living out of. But they could be very expensive, calling a designer.
Absolutely. Arthur, if we could just sum up, if you can think of like the 3 words that you hope that people take away from Leeds Carnival each year, what sort of 3 things would you hope that they take away from it?
Is the joy that carnival brings to people, and the relation between all class, color, and creed. For the only time you see people uniting together in harmony. And for me, they've always maintained the government should sponsor carnival, because carnival succeed where the politicians fail. Spend a hell of a lot of money on race awareness and inclusive, and they get none out of it. For carnival, as you see, when you come out for carnival, we had, it's interesting when you look at Leeds Carnival, West Indian Carnival, and we became the minority into the sea of people. And it's the only time you see people in harmony together and having fun, for that is the last part of it.
Well, that's an incredible legacy, I would say.
Pardon?
That's an incredible legacy, I would say.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you see people for the love, and it's just something that I cherish. When you come out the park and you see the amount of people, and you see people of all race, color, class, and creed. And for that time, you forget who you are. You could be the Prime Minister, It could be, I mean, the MP Hamilton playing me troop, and some of the councillors. You know what I mean? And it's something that I see, because why can't we find a common ground to work and play and live together and with respect for each other? So that's all it needed.
Yeah, well, that's
I think we're running out of iPhone storage.
you cover so many topics. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much.
Mm.